All right, let me take you back to a summer evening in Austin, Texas, where the air was thick with heat and the kind of quiet that makes you feel like something's about to break. My name's Ellie Harper, and I run a place called Sanctuary House, a little haven tucked away on the edge of town for veterans who've been through hell and just need a soft place to land. It's not much, just a sturdy old building with creaky floors and a big heart, but to me, and to the folks who call it home, it's everything, a lifeline, a promise that no one gets left behind. I grew up hearing my dad's stories, a Marine who served in Desert Storm, tales of brotherhood, sacrifice, and coming home to a world that didn't always know how to welcome him back. When he passed, I poured my grief into building this place, a way to honor him and every vet like him who deserved more than a cold shoulder. Sanctuary House wasn't just my job, it was my soul, my way of keeping his memory alive. But that summer, trouble rolled into town on two wheels, and it wasn't the kind you could sweet talk away. It started on a Tuesday, the sun beating down like it had a personal grudge. I was inside, juggling a tray of sandwiches and meds, checking on folks, when old Joe Carter, everybody called him Pops, came hobbling into the common room, his walker scraping the floor. Pops was a Korean War vet, tough as nails but soft-spoken, the kind of guy who'd seen it all and still had a twinkle in his eye. "Ellie," he said, his voice low, urgent. "You better get out here. There's a crew of bikers in the lot, and they ain't here for the lemonade." I set the tray down, my stomach doing a little flip, and followed Pops to the front door. Sure enough, there they were, a dozen motorcycles gleaming like predators in the sunlight, all chrome and menace. At the center was a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a bad action flick, leather jacket, snake tattoo curling up his neck, and a smirk that could curdle milk. His name was Vince Rattler Kane, leader of the Iron Vipers MC, and he carried himself like he owned the ground he walked on. I stepped outside, trying to keep my cool, though my heart was hammering. "Can I help you?" I asked, polite but firm, like I was talking to a rowdy neighbor. Vince turned, slow, sizing me up like I was a bug he could squash. Well, he drawled, his voice all gravel and mockery. "You must be the saint running this little charity case. Nice spot you got here, real quiet, out of the way. Perfect for, let's call it a side hustle." I felt my jaw tighten. "This is a shelter for veterans," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We don't do side hustles. You need to leave." His smirk widened, and he stepped closer, close enough I could smell the leather and cigarette smoke. "Oh, darling, you don't get it. This place, it's gonna be our new fight club underground. No cops, big money. And you're gonna play ball, or things get messy." Before I could fire back, Pop stepped up beside me, his walker creaking but his eyes blazing. "You heard the lady," he growled, his voice carrying the weight of a man who'd faced worse than this punk. "Get off our land." Vince laughed, a nasty sound, and leaned in toward Pops. "What's an old-timer like you gonna do, huh? Hit me with your cane?" The tension was thick enough to choke on, but then another sound cut through, a deep, steady rumble of a single motorcycle engine. That's when Caleb "Hawk" Ramsey pulled up. Caleb was one of our own, a younger vet who'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan and had this quiet intensity that made people listen. He wasn't big, but he moved like he knew exactly what he was capable of. He swung off his bike, his boots hitting the gravel with purpose, and walked straight toward us. "There a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp, like a blade hidden in velvet. Vince's smirk faltered, just for a second. "Just a friendly chat," he said, but there was less swagger in it now. Caleb didn't blink. "Friendly's over. Time to roll out." For a moment, nobody moved, the air crackling like a storm was coming. Then Vince raised his hands, all fake innocence, and signaled his crew. "We'll be back," he said, climbing onto his bike. "Count on it." They roared off, leaving dust and a bad feeling in their wake. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thanks, Caleb," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He nodded, his eyes still on the road where the Vipers had disappeared. "This ain't over, Ellie. Guys like that don't walk away easy." Pops put a hand on my shoulder, his grip surprisingly strong. "He's right. We need to be ready." I nodded, my mind already racing. Sanctuary House was my home, my dad's legacy, and I'd be damned if I let some wannabe tough guy take it from us. That night, the shelter felt different, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I was in the kitchen, packing a basket of leftovers for one of our older residents. when a crash shattered the quiet glass, breaking, loud and sharp. I ran to the front room, where a handful of vets were staring at a busted window, shards glittering on the floor like jagged stars. On the wall outside, spray painted in red, were the words, "Give up or burn." My heart sank, but before I could say anything, the roar of engines filled the air again. I flung open the door, and there was Vince, circling the lot with his crew like a pack of wolves. "Evening, Saint," he called out, his voice dripping with venom. "Just a little housewarming gift." I clenched my fists, fury drowning out my fear. "You've got no right to be here, Vince," I shouted. He laughed, dismounting his bike and striding toward me, his boots kicking up gravel. "Rights? This is about power, sweetheart. And you don't have it." He leaned in, his voice dropping low. "Hand over this place, or we'll tear it down and you with it." Pops appeared in the doorway, his face like stone. "You've said your piece, boy," he said, his voice steady as iron. "Now get gone before I teach you what an old Marine can do." Vince smirked, but backed off, signaling his crew to leave. "Sleep tight," he said, and they peeled out, leaving us shaken but not broken. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept replaying Vince's words, the way his eyes gleamed with malice, and by the time I was driving home, my hands were still shaking. That's when I heard a growl of motorcycles behind me. Headlights flooded my rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. They'd been waiting. Vince pulled up beside my car, his face all teeth and menace. "Thought we were done, Saint," he yelled, and before I could react, one of his guys threw a chain, smashing my windshield into a spiderweb of cracks. I screamed, swerving but holding the wheel tight, my heart pounding so hard I thought it had burst. They laughed, circling me like vultures, then sped off into the night, leaving me alone on the dark road, gripping the wheel like it was my lifeline. I pulled over, my breaths coming in gasps, fear turning to rage. "They think they can scare me?" I muttered, my voice shaking but fierce. "They don't know who they're messing with." I grabbed my phone and dialed Caleb. "I need you," I said when he picked up, my voice steady now. They went too far. By dawn, Caleb's motorcycle roared into the sanctuary's lot, his face grim as he took in my busted-up car. "What happened?" he asked, his voice tight. I told him everything: the window, the graffiti, the attack on the road. His jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. "They crossed a line, Ellie. This is personal now." I nodded, my anger matching his. "I'm not letting them take this place, Caleb. Not now, not ever." He gave me a sharp nod. "Then we fight smart. Let's get to work." Inside, Pops was already at a table, a map of the property spread out like he was planning a military op. Despite his age, his mind was razor sharp. "We've got weak spots," he said, pointing to the map. "Back gate's flimsy, windows are too easy to smash, and we've got no eyes on the perimeter at night." Caleb leaned over, his brows furrowed. "We'll reinforce the gate, board up the windows, and get motion sensor lights up. I'll call in some friends." Pops nodded, approving. "Good, but we need bodies. Numbers matter in a fight like this." I looked between them, my resolve hardening. "Will the other vets help?" Caleb straightened, his eyes steady. "If they know what's at stake, they will. Give me till morning." By sunrise, the lot was alive with the rumble of bikes. Caleb had called in the Lone Star Vets MC, a crew of grizzled riders with silver eagle patches on their jackets. Among them was Ray Tank Morales, a Vietnam vet with a laugh as big as his heart, and Lena Doc Flores, a former Army medic who carried a first aid kit like it was part of her. "Caleb told us what's going down," Tank said, his voice rough but warm. "We're not letting these punks mess with our own." I felt a lump in my throat. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it with everything I had. The day was a blur of work. Tank and Pops welded steel bars onto the back gate, turning it into a fortress. Caleb led a crew boarding up windows and rigging floodlights. Lena set up a medical station in the common room, just in case. Even the town started showing up. Miss Clara from the diner brought trays of food. Tommy the mechanic hauled in lumber, and kids from the neighborhood painted over the Vipers' graffiti, turning their hate into bright murals of stars and flags. It was like the whole community was saying, "Not today." I worked alongside them, painting, hammering, refusing to sit still. This was my fight too. That night, we gathered in the common room, the air heavy with purpose. Caleb stood up front, his voice steady but fierce. "We've locked this place down, But if the Vipers come back, and they will stand together. They're not just attacking Sanctuary House. They're spitting on everything it stands for. Pops added, his voice carrying decades of grit. This is about honor, about the people who've walked through these doors. We don't back down. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my voice clear. They think they can scare us, break us, take what's ours. They're wrong. We're stronger than they'll ever know. The room erupted in agreement, a wave of defiance that felt unstoppable. The next night, they came. The floodlights snapped on, catching the Vipers like roaches in a spotlight. Vince led the charge, his face twisted with rage, his crew wielding chains and bats. "You built a cute little fort," he shouted, his voice dripping with scorn. Caleb stepped out to meet him, his posture all steel. "You've had your fun, Vince. Walk away now, or you won't walk away at all." Vince laughed, but it was hollow. "Oh, this is gonna be good," he said, and with a nod, his crew surged forward. It was chaos, bats clanging against pipes, shouts echoing in the night. Caleb took down one biker with a clean punch, sending him sprawling. Pops, bless him, used his walker like a weapon, tripping a guy and whacking another with his cane. "Not bad for an old-timer, huh?" he called out, grinning. I stayed inside at first, coordinating supplies, but when I saw two Vipers heading for the memorial wall, me Dad's Wally lost it. I grabbed a wrench and ran out, yelling, "Get away from that!" I swung hard, catching one guy's arm, making him drop his chain. The other lunged, but Caleb was there, tackling him to the ground. "Stay with the group, Ellie," he shouted, but I saw the respect in his eyes. Vince wasn't done. He stormed toward Pops, his chain swinging. "You think you're tough, old man," he snarled. Pops just smirked, sidestepping like he was 20 years younger, and hooked Vince's ankle with his cane, sending him face first into the dirt. The crowd roared, and I couldn't help but laugh, even in the middle of it all. Vince scrambled up, furious, and turned on me, his eyes wild. "You're done, Saint," he growled, raising his chain. I grabbed the folded flag from the wall, holding it like a shield. "You're nothing compared to what this place stands for," I said, my voice steady, though my knees were shaking. That split second of hesitation was all Caleb needed. He tackled Vince, pinning him with a knee to the chest. "It's over," Caleb said, his voice low, deadly. "Get out, or you're leaving in cuffs." Vince cursed, but didn't fight back. Caleb hauled him up, shoving him toward his crew. "And don't come back," he said, his voice final. The Vipers peeled out, their bikes roaring into the night, their pride in tatters. As dawn broke, the shelter stood proud, a little banged up, but unbroken. We cleaned up the mess, broken glass, scuffed walls, and it felt like we were rebuilding more than just a building. I stood by the memorial wall, tracing my dad's name, feeling him with me. Pops joined me, his cane tapping softly. "Your dad would have loved this," he said, his voice thick. I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. "Yeah, he would have." Weeks later, Sanctuary House was stronger than ever. Word spread, and donations poured in, money, supplies, even volunteers from other towns. One afternoon, a new group of vets showed up, their leader, a woman named Tara, shaking my hand. "You inspired us," she said. "We want in." I looked around at the shelter, at Pops joking with Tank, at Caleb checking the new gate, at the kids painting murals, and I felt Ithop, real and solid. So here's the thing. We fought for Sanctuary House, but it wasn't just about a building. It was about standing up, about saying no to bullies who think they can take what's yours just because they're louder, meaner. But I keep wondering, were we right to fight like that? Could we have found another way? Or was this the only language guys like Vince understand? I'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever had to stand your ground? Maybe for something small, maybe for something as big as a home? Drop it in the comments, share your story. If this moved you, give it a thumbs up, pass it along to someone who gets what it means to fight for what matters, and hit that subscribe button so we can keep sharing stories like this. Thanks for listening. Let's keep the conversation going.